Welcome to the Wordy Podcast, your go-to hub for all things writing, world building, and the occasional dive into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We're breaking down the barriers between you and your next great story. Whether you're a seasoned scribe or just scribbling your first sentences, we've got something for you. We'll be discussing everything from crafting compelling characters to dissecting the good, the bad, and the downright bizarre in the world of fiction. Okay, this script says you guys are eccentric. Isn't that just a 3-syllable word for weird? No offense. So, whether you're in need of inspiration, a good laugh, or just a couple of weirdos to keep you company on your writing journey, you're in the right place. Thanks for tuning in to the Wordy Pair Podcast.
All right. Welcome to... Hold on a minute. Is this 7 already?
8. We're on 8.
Are we on 8?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, leave this
Holy
in.
cow, you're right. All right. Welcome to episode 8 of the Wordy Pair Podcast. I am Rudy.
And I'm Justin.
And we are here to talk about some fun short story pulp style stuff that we've been doing recently. There is a website. They're producing a magazine. They're called Iron Age Media, and they have been producing these, what do you call it, literature prompts, and even art prompts, too. And you basically write a short story for them, or a piece of flash fiction, or they even accept poetry.
Yeah, it's an aggregator. It's
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not, I mean, an aggregator is, it's really, they're really trying to be like a new pulp magazine, honestly.
Well, I mean, the prompts, the prompts, they have like an aggregator
sure.
thing going there where it's just like, hey, just, write a story and, chances are they'll put it up there as long as it's readable, it goes up. It gives people an opportunity to get linked back to their stuff and get some eyeballs on it.
Yeah, it works pretty well. I mean, everything that I've submitted there gets some hits, and then a couple of hits spread around the rest of my blog, and, I mean, it seems to work pretty well.
And my Substack got absolutely demolished with hits after the Bagmen.
Oh, that's good, yeah.
I was like, okay, cool.
This is a thing that seems to work.
I'm wrong. It wasn't the Bagmen. Surprisingly,
it wasn't the Bagmen. Oh.
I meant to tell you about this. That little superhero thing that I wrote. It was like the next day, all of a sudden, it was just like. So if you look at my stats page, it's just like goes from like kind of hovering around 10 to 20, and then it just shoots up for one day and then comes back down. And I'm like, it's probably the lousiest thing that I wrote and put up there, but whatever. It never fails. That's always how it goes. It's like, oh, I wrote all these great things, and then it's like, all right, well, here's some kind of like trash that I wrote that I'm still proud of, at least, so I'll just go ahead and put that there too. And then it's like, that's the one everyone liked. My God.
You mean the Button Man?
Yeah.
The Button Man is really good, number one. And number two, like, the Button Man is really good.
I mean, on a personal note, it's like my, like, a least favorite of mine that I've posted up there so far. But apparently my tastes are way, way different than everyone else's. That was just like a fun little thing I wrote to prove a point.
Well, like, I don't know. Like, it's interesting that you say that because, like, I don't know that people necessarily click on these things because they, like, think that they'll like the particular story. I think they're clicking on it because just to see what's there. Because, I mean, so Iron Age posts a picture, and you just write the story based on your impression of the picture and any creative ideas you can come out of that. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, like, they don't know that your story... They don't know what the Button Man is about. They just know that it's called the Button Man.
It's not... I'm not sure that most of that even came from Iron Age, because most of... Iron Age is like the second most hits that I get on things. Oh,
really? Okay.
The most... Substack is actually really good for getting people to, like, directly find you when you post something new, but... okay. You kind of have to... You have to keep going with it to really have any noticeable effect, so you have to, like I do something about once a week now, and that has definitely changed, how many people actually see it.
I see.
I was doing once a month before, and it was like, eh. And then I tried posting, like, a ton of things all in one day, and it was like, eh. Because I put all of Sylvia Saga up, and
Yeah.
that's like my least viewed thing, and it's an entire book that you can read for free. So it's like, whatever.
Yeah.
Probably not a good idea to post it in parts like I did, but I kind of had to in case I
Well-
ever wanted to put it on Amazon as a book.
Well, you were doing with the Sylvia Saga. You were doing like a once a week thing for prompt over on Minds, right? At first.
It wasn't a prompt. So Sylvia started
was it?
as a one. The first chapter was just a one-off I wrote for a short story contest.
Right.
After that, I had so much fun writing it that I was like, I could probably do a little more with this, and then somehow it turned
continue
into an entire novella.
Which is good.
Yeah, wait, it was like 5,000 words, and then it was like 36,000 words.
30,000 words. Yeah.
That's how book writing goes, though.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if you come up with a good idea and you want to go forward with it, then that's just how it goes. You just got to push on. Like, never give up on something when it's still never give up on the well when it's still producing oil, right?
Yeah. So anyway, if it hasn't become obvious, the point is we're pretty much winging it today because we wanted a different subject to talk about from the one that we were ready for, or semi-ready for.
The one that I was ready for.
To be fair, I've been ready for that one for 30 some odd years.
30 years or so, yeah.
But like the last 20 of those 30
freshness.
years were plenty of time for me to forget.
Yeah, that's the problem.
But we'll get to that.
If we had started this podcast when you were a child, it would have been fine.
Well, I mean, since we're talking about our stories anyway, so next week probably we will be discussing Pippi Longstocking, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And there are lots and lots of things in my stories that were directly influenced from Pippi Longstocking. Like it's not all just anime weeb stuff with me. It's also Pippi Longstocking.
It's also Pippi Longstocking.
Which is one other thing, so. But
we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week.
And we're going to do a deep dive, basically.
Well, no, actually, since I've got you here, since you've already started recording and can't run away, I do want to ask you, because you mentioned...
I can run away, it's just that it would be impolite to do so.
I know.
and anti-productive.
Yeah, so we'll continue to be productive here by me cornering you with this one. You mentioned recently, I'd posted something on a thing somewhere, I can't remember if it was Twitter or Minds, about one of my characters, and you actually said that Maniacala Elishard is one of your favorite characters that I created.
Oh,
why?
I mean, from like a visual perspective, I guess. Like there's just like there's so much that character. There's so much disjointedness in that character, and like, you know, she shows up and she just has a really great. She just has a really great like way of talking and like perspective on things. I don't know. Like she was one of the standouts in The Good Guy. Like I was always riveted to the page when Elishard was around.
Yeah, she was kind of. I mean, it was one of them things where you were right. It's a good dynamic of having a monster that is also a bit of a ditz.
Well, because the ditz shows up first. Right?
Yeah.
If I'm remembering Good Guy correctly.
Oh,
like she
for a few
shows up
seconds.
She shows up and she has a clipboard and she's a little bit like she's described as kind of like quirky, goofy kind of thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, here, let me turn this key in your back, and she turns into like a hellfire monster, and it's just I don't know that duality is I find that duality to be fun. I mean, like, you know, I mean, I wouldn't say she's not as cool as Ray Peril, but like she considering how much time she gets in the book, she makes a big impression per time, I guess.
She always had. There were always opportunities for me to give her really good lines or really good like one-off moments.
Well, she's a good foil. Like she's, I don't know. She's like,
yeah. Well, she's more powerful than pretty much the rest of the characters, save for Ray Peril himself. And so her being there, like, once in a while kind of makes that whole dynamic work.
It works really well. And then she, you know, as soon as she's done, she goes right back to being a ditz with the clipboard.
Yeah.
It's just, I like that switching going on, where it's like, this character is really two characters, and both of them are interesting.
Yeah, that's That's some nice feedback, though. I don't usually ask people what they think of my individual characters so much, but yeah.
No, I mean she's really memorable. Like her character traits are traits that are, conducive to wanting to know what's going to happen next. Like, you never really know. Like with Ray, you kind of know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it's a little obvious. It's like, hey, there's a bad guy. They're probably going to die.
They're going to die. It's going to be bad, but also awesome.
It's going to be
something
brutal.
like that. Brutal, yes. But with Elishard, it's like, well, what's going to happen? Is this going to happen? And then you put her into a couple of interesting. I haven't read The Good Guy in a while, but I remember that she was in a couple of the scenarios that I thought were particularly interesting. I mean, like just her versus the first time she showed up was fighting the army guys. I can't remember the name.
She showed up because Ray Peril didn't feel like dealing with an entire army base, so he was just like, "Here, you handle this."
Basically, yeah, and it's like, oh,
and that's like, it's like a couple chapters in, so it's like, wait, he had this in his back pocket the whole time.
Yeah, he didn't bother. He's like, no, it's all.
At a primal level, that is largely what The Good Guy was. It was just moments like that where it's like, wait a minute, he could do that the whole time.
Yeah, it works on a lot of levels that way. It's fantastic.
I mean, I do have my favorite moment. My favorite moment with Elishard is when Ray Peril summons her, and she just appears on the hood of a car that's going like 160 miles an hour, and she's just sitting there on the hood of the car, brushing her teeth in her pajamas, like, "Oh, hey, what's up?"
Yeah, it's things like that are especially like visually poignant. Like they pop out in your head as like visual things that happen, and you're like, that's awesome. Why can't we get more of that?
I think you're probably going to wear me down at some point, and I am going to have to get someone to do a graphic novel version of it, because it just there's a lot of stuff that would look really cool in the comic book form, I think.
I mean, like it would be a huge pain to take what did you call it, 230,000 words?
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, 230,000 word novel into a graphic novel, like. You could do one chapter in a book, and then you could do another chapter in another book.
Things get condensed very, very quickly when you go to comic book format, because there's a lot of things that I describe in.
No, because this is interesting, because it's called The Sumerian, but it's actually a retelling of a couple of the Conan stories, and I have.
Oh yeah, I have that. I don't think I.
Elric.
Yeah, I haven't read that yet.
I have a few Elric books. And they're not really condensed that much, honestly. Like, they're looking at a novella of, 20,000 words. And, I mean, there's definitely a lot of like, visual stuff that's missing, but, like, the dialogue is pretty much all there. The actual actions are all there. There's almost nothing missing from the novella as far as, like, scenes or actions that go on. And I mean, you end up with, 80 pages of comics for, 10 pages of text, and it's pretty much all there. Like, the things that are described are drawn as pictures, but other than that, everything's there. So, like, no, a 230,000 word book into graphic novel would be a daunting task. I'll just put it that way.
It's broken up into chapters enough to where it would probably work out well.
Well, like, you could take each chapter of The Good Guy and make it into an individual book. That would be realistic.
Except the last chapter. You need about 2 or 3 books for the last.
I mean, you would have to split that chapter up into a couple of books, but yes.
No, that's all my fault, but it was fun.
That was a very weird experience, because I was reading The Good Guy. I was bored at a scientific conference, and so I was like I was reading The Good Guy and reading The Good Guy and reading The Good Guy, and then all of a sudden this chapter starts, and all the characters are different, and I'm like, wait, what's going on here? And it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And, like, you start to get hints that, like, okay, this character maybe? And then you keep going and you keep going and you keep going and you keep going. And then finally, at the very end, everything snaps back into place, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. And then the book ends.
I dragged that out on purpose, because I was like, someone's going to get to this part of the book, and they're just going to be like, what is going on here? This is
That is exactly the reaction that I had. So you did a good job.
Yeah, because when it gets back to where I actually so most of the book is written in first person perspective from one character as the narrator. And every once in a while, I would jump away to like the villains or something, to where you would...
Yeah, but it was pretty consistently first person.
Yeah, and just these little excerpts where it's like the villains are talking to each other. Then we would go back to the heroes, and it would be in first person again.
Yeah,
and then I get to the last chapter. Almost the entire thing I made in third person because where's the narrator? She's nowhere around. She's not part of the story right now. So there's just like this entire chapter out of nowhere is in third person. And then I just sort of roll into something after that where it's like, oh, wait, we're back at first person now. What just happened? Something just clicked. Yeah. Something just clicked.
Yes. Something just clicked. Yeah, that's exactly how it went. Oh, man. I do need to read that again.
It was incredibly fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like that book is...
I'm not going to tell other people what's incredibly fun or not. I'm just going to say it was incredibly fun.
No, listen to me. That book is incredibly fun to read as well, because you can feel the fun that was had in writing it when you read it. It's just so, like, it. This is why I say it should be a graphic novel or a series of graphic novels, because it would work so well in that medium, because it's such a visual book. Like, you can see every scene that's happening. You can imagine all the characters. You can, there's all these cool action scenes where something fun happens, and you're like, oh, cool, that happened. And then something even cooler happens. You're like, oh, cool, that happened too.
Well, I'm glad to know that that's how it came out, because that's what I was going for.
I mean, like, I don't understand how the Good Guy isn't I understand how Good Guy isn't a bestseller. It's because you put it up and, like, you couldn't afford to, like, advertise it, and you didn't have any
Well, I'm
clout.
also not good at advertising. I'm going to go ahead and say that.
Well, that set that aside. You can hire someone to advertise your book. But, like, I don't know. That book should have sold 1 million copies.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, he's 100% right. Everyone go buy it.
You should. Nowadays, you can make paperbacks on Amazon. You could re-release it as a paperback, and I'll give you a quote for the back. This thing should sell 1 million copies.
You know what? I'm just going to put that. I'm going to put that as your quote, because I don't have to re-release it. You can just. So for anyone who is looking for actual tips, like we said we were going to give.
Yeah.
One of the things you can do if you've self-published on Amazon, you got to go in there. You know, you might want to hire someone to make sure you get your formatting correct for the print version.
Yes.
But you'll need a full-length cover for front and back. I think Amazon does...
And spine, too, probably.
Yes, and spine, so which is not hard to find. I mean, jump on Fiverr. There's lots of people that'll do it for you.
Oh, well, I mean, speaking of which, I just got my most recent cover from Fiverr, and I was very impressed, honestly.
Yeah, there's people that do great work there, and they're happy to, because most of the time they're people in countries where they can really use the money, and the $20 or so that they're charging you goes way further than for them over there than $100 for someone here is going to go. It's like,
yeah. Well, I mean, like, I had done a pre-made cover. Like, I had found one and bought the pre-made cover, and then they put the title and the author name on it, kind of thing. And that was more expensive and less what I wanted.
Yeah, well, another thing that you're probably going to start noticing this is, you're spending $150 to $200, maybe even more for a book cover when you're getting, like, custom or pre-made covers. Custom, you're going to look at like $150 to $500, $1,000 with a really, really, really good artist.
Well, like, what do you mean by custom necessarily? Because I mean, like, the Fiverr guy did a custom cover. Like, he did exactly what I asked him to.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Is like, well, I'm talking in the Western world here.
After tip, it was $40.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what you do with those. It's like, I would have spent $300 on this here. You're charging me $20. I'm going to go ahead and give you another $30 or $40. Just yeah. It's like you're doing a world of good for someone somewhere. But the thing is, you're going to start noticing, I mean, I think I've already seen some of it, but I haven't been 100% sure, where the pre-made covers especially, people are just going to be generating them with AI, but then they're still going to be selling them for $150.
Well,
And
so
soon as people catch on to that, everyone's just going to start using AI covers.
it's not usually AI. I mean, like the pre-made cover company that I went to before has a no AI policy.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like,
some of them do.
What it actually is it's stock. They're stock images.
Yeah.
So people just have like, I mean, if you are interested in producing visual objects, there are libraries, massive libraries of stock images that you can use royalty free as long as you pay the licensing fee for the subscription to the database or whatever you want to call it. And people will get their subscriptions to that, and they'll do searches for, and it's not just like photographs. People put art there too, like, pictures of spaceships or whatever.
Yeah.
And whenever their stuff gets used, they get a little bit for that. But like in general, they're royalty free for end users, so it works pretty well.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I know which one you're talking about, and they're actually a pretty good resource. If I don't remember what they were called, but
I think it's just bookcoverdesigners.com or something like that.
Yeah, they're
it's really simple.
They're a good resource for getting a book cover without spending $1,000. I don't personally like a lot of the art styles I see on them, but
I mean, you have to sift through a lot.
Yeah,
but
every once in a while you see one that's like, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my Missed Contact cover was pretty good. Like, it was pretty close to what I wanted.
Yeah, it's harder. It's harder if you're looking for like a person on the cover. Like if you've got a character and you kind of want.
Yeah, that's a huge pain. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
But then it's also weird because the majority of the things that you'll find there have people on the cover. So like you're inundated with covers that have characters, but most of them aren't going to be what you want. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think I've found 2 matches for something that I could actually use at some point.
No, I mean, if you want people on the cover, then it's going to be really hard because you already have an idea in your head of what that... Like you want your characters in the cover, and that's going to be a problem because you already have a good idea of what your characters look like, and nobody's going to have the same idea of what your characters look like unless you tell them what it is and they create it.
Yeah.
You know? That's where it gets expensive, but like, that's fine. I'm writing science fiction. You can take a picture of a library and tint it red, and I am good to go.
Well,
because that's what he did. that's literally what I asked him for. I'm like, well, so part of the element of the story is that there's this underground library, and I'm like, so could you do like a library, but like you can't have any windows in the picture, And it should be like an old library, like old books, and red or orangish as if it's tinted in candlelight. And he's like, "Cool, I can do that." And then 6 hours later, I had my cover.
And that was for the I forgot the name of it again.
That was Fiverr.
No, not Fiverr. The soul still.
What the soul still fears.
What the soul still fears. Yes, we were talking about that before we started this particular recording. Yeah. It was memorable covers and names and things like that, but we're saving that for...
As of recording, it's the 28th of October, so that novella will be out on the 30th for general sale.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm special. I got a pre-order
because you're on Smashwords. Oh man, it was the first time they noticed that my like username had Junior and my author name did not.
Yeah, that's funny. Heads up for people that write on Smashwords, you have to have the same author name on your covers, otherwise it'll flag it as it'll take it out of the premium catalog.
Right. It's a little complicated, but yeah, well, like you quote unquote do, but in reality you can get away with it for like 7-10. You can get away with it for almost 10 years before anyone notices.
Well, I don't really think so, because they noticed mine right away because I was trying to figure out how to do a pen name. I had originally...
No. You don't understand. I've been Rudolph Cohn Jr. on that front page of my like profile since I started.
Yeah, but I think that
I published my first novella as Rudolph Cohn. I published my second novella as Rudolph Cohn. All of my short stories are Rudolph Cohn. My third novella, Rudolph Cohn. This one, I was like, Rudolph Cohn. And they're like, it needs to match, including suffix. And I'm like, really? It hasn't ever before.
I think that's why. Is it just, it was harder to notice that it's just missing the suffix. Mine was a little more blatant. So, like,
oh, sure, yeah.
I
you
was
changed it
originally
a
writing
bunch.
under the pen name Muppy Heingart.
Right.
And actually, I left it for years. I just left 2 of my books out of the premium catalog because I didn't feel like changing the name on the cover.
Right.
Which you can do. You can still have it up there, but they want
Yeah.
you to have your name on the cover in order to have their highest distribution setting.
Yeah, they throw it at Barnes and Noble and Apple Store and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you have a different name on the cover, they won't let it get past the Smashwords store, which,
Right.
I like Smashwords a lot, but I'm thinking of pulling, not pulling, but like taking a lot of the stuff I have on there and just putting it on my Substack, because Smashwords has like this. So
a lot of your stuff on there is free.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, and you totally should, but like, yeah, that stuff should all go up on your Substack. Like, all of my short stories are on my blog.
Yeah, and it's Smashwords kind of has this wall between readers and your stuff where if you have a free book and someone goes to Smashwords to download a copy, they have to sign up for a Smashwords account to be able to download it. And if your book is also in multiple catalogs, like if you're on Barnes & Noble, obviously they would need the Barnes & Noble app to see it. Apple, they would need the Apple Books app to see it.
Well, no, because you can look it up on the web, right? Like, you can look up the story. Like, if I go to the Barnes & Noble store.
Oh yeah, you can look it up on the website too. Just my point is that like their main thing has a bigger block to it than everything else. So like, you're better off if you have something on Smashwords. You're better off giving people links to Barnes & Noble or...
Yeah. Well, yeah, those are more common for people that already have logins for, I guess is your point.
Yeah. Or, it's easier for people to associate, hey, there's books at Barnes & Noble. And, Barnes & Noble even has their own reader, even though it's like, what is the Nook at? Like a 7% market share at this point?
I mean,
I have one. I use it. I love it.
Yeah, my dad has one. They're good. They're not bad.
I like it better than the Kindle. The Kindle has a better battery life, but in every other respect, I think the Nook is better. I'm talking about the e-ink readers, of course. The apps are pretty standard. In fact, the Kindle app is better than the Barnes & Noble app. It's just there's not that much a difference there that it matters.
Right.
Amazon does formatting really well for the things that you read.
Yeah. Well, Amazon has that Kindle, what's it called?
KDP? Kindle Direct?
Well, it has like the Kindle Create app, which is designed to mesh exactly with like when I create a Kindle Create document and send it to Amazon, they don't do any additional processing. It's all done at my end, and I send them the file. Yeah. As long as it's the right format, they just put it up. So that way I can see exactly what it's going to look like, which is much nicer.
Yeah, but actually, now that you mentioned that, I should get back to my original point before our tangent.
Uh-huh.
If you're going to do paperback, or I think you can do hardcover on Amazon. I can't remember though. But if you have a book and you're going to do an actual paperback run on Amazon, their print on demand service, you want to make sure you get the formatting right. You want to send them a good PDF. You want to make sure you have a cover that is nice and lined up. You're probably better off paying someone that's good at doing that.
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt to learn it yourself. I've done most of the stuff that I've done by myself.
Have you done any paperbacks yet?
I have not, but I did mess around with some formatting to try and get it right, and I decided that I could do it, but I'm going to pay someone to do it.
I see.
So I think even if I can do it, I know that whoever I pay to do it is going to do it better.
That's fair.
It does take a while to get used to doing it.
Well, when you're dealing with real physical media, you can't expect that things just automatically format the way that they're supposed to. So you really have to. There's a lot more oversight involved.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of trouble where, like, I used to have The Good Guy on Google Play Books.
Yeah.
And the formatting, they wanted a PDF, and I sent them a PDF, and the formatting was just atrocious, and I was like, I don't know what I did wrong, everything looks good on my end.
Yeah.
And so I just took it down.
Well, like, I don't know how Google managed to screw up a PDF, but, whatever.
I mean, I'm sure it's something I did, but I couldn't figure out what it was.
No, it might not be. It might be that Google is bad at... I mean, PDF is literally what you see is what you get, open format now. Like, Adobe tries to get you to pay to edit a PDF, but the PDF format is open now, and everybody knows what it is, and anyone who wants to can write software to edit PDFs. So
Yeah.
like it's not like I am not surprised that some app store thing screwed up your formatting, because that's not I mean, if it looks good in a word processing document, it should not look bad when you put it into the app thing. But the fact that it did is just means to me that there's some kind of problem with how it handles formatting, which is stupid.
Yeah, it's probably trying to adjust something, because I'm pretty sure that the entire system...
It shouldn't have to adjust anything. That's dumb.
Well, no, that's the thing. I think the system is more designed around doing EPUB style. So if you do publish digitally...
That's just another format, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's not quite the same. Like EPUB has... I mean, it's basically like an XML file almost, where it can be edited.
I realize that, but like...
So I suspect that the problem might be that it's taking PDFs, because they say outright that they prefer to have an EPUB document to work with.
Sure.
So probably whatever system they have to produce the digital version of whatever you send them. Because they don't use just the PDF you send them. They do not do that.
No, of course not. That'd be too easy.
Yeah. What they do is they put it through their own thing, which is probably trying to do all the adjustments to it that an EPUB file would take. And since it's a PDF, it's just ignoring all that, but it's screwing something up somewhere. It's just a guess on my end on what's happening.
Well, I mean, it knows that it has a PDF as an input, so it should be able to, like, okay, I'm pulling out the text of the chapter 1. I'm pulling out the text of the chapter 2. Here's the heading of chapter 1. Here's the heading. It should be able to do all that.
Yeah.
But I feel like their software is probably just screwed up.
Probably.
Because I mean, everyone and their dog knows how to deal with a PDF these days.
It's kind of like... It's almost like they started to take your PDF of...
Well, you should describe what happened to your thing, I guess is
I haven't looked at it in so long, I
don't
remember. I just got sick of trying to fix it, because I must have...
Well, didn't... You were complaining to me about this very vividly not too long ago.
No, that was something different.
That was something else? Okay.
Yeah, I've never mentioned the Google thing to you, I don't think.
Fair enough.
But I got sick of trying to deal with it.
No, that makes sense.
I think, though, and this, I mean, you can tell me what your thoughts are on this, but half hour into our discussion of our Iron Age prompts, do you think we should talk about those?
I mean, if we get around to it.
But no, I mean, that's all good advice, so, it
this is kind of a potpourri episode, so we can kind of...
Yeah, we can do whatever we want.
Around a little bit. It's our freaking podcast.
Yeah, you know what? We're going to talk about clowns for the next 20 minutes.
Let's not go that far afield.
But I'm right here. You've got an expert.
I mean, to be fair, it is the 28th of October. This is an appropriate time to be talking about clowns.
All right.
As the scariest thing that humans can be.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say that. Shoot! I'm going to forget a title again.
Title of what?
The Jade Cargo. Jade Cargo. Yes. Let's talk about Jade Cargo for a minute. This is a story that you wrote for an Iron Age prompt, and
yes.
Well, I guess you can open. Is there anything you want to say about that?
Well, so where's the? Where did it go?
All right, so I'll go ahead and.
Hold on, let me open it up, because I was going to get it on the Iron Age site, but that prompt does not appear to be there.
Oh, you're not on the right. Oh, okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and open up and be like, okay, so this is a cool story that you wrote that had a character investigating an SOS on a spaceship.
Yes.
Arriving in a setting where, at first it seems like, oh, well, there's probably a lot of problems here. I should see what's going on and inform the proper people and, do any salvage that I should do, if I'm remembering correctly. And, like...
It would help if I could just find the story. I have a copy of it.
I would hope so. I'll be fair. I've lost copies of stories because I thought that I had backups from websites, which I didn't.
It was from so I went to the Iron Age website and like I was like, oh, I'll find it here, and like the infestation prompt is not available. Like it's just not on the page. Like I was looking for it. Yeah. It's because
that was one of their most popular prompts.
I know, but what happened is that they do 4 a month, and the little window that they have to post like this month's only has room for 3, and so there's always one that's like in limbo.
Oh, right.
So yeah, I had to go to my actual blog to find it. Okay, but I'm here now. So what do we want to talk about this?
Well, I mean, just anything that you would like to say about it, really.
Well,
It's
got
a fun little beginning where it gives you a sense of, yeah, there's something weird going on. Usually going into these kinds of stories, you're pretty aware that something weird is going to be going on.
So I have a huge fascination with derelict spaceships. I'm just going to say that. That is like
the
my
devil,
first.
you say.
but I actually, when I was writing my first novella, I called all of the stories that I wrote alongside that novella that I still haven't published. They were all part of the Derelict project because this was in 2013, and for some reason I was like, cool, I'm gonna write a bunch of stuff based on this idea of these derelict spaceship kind of things. But anyway, yeah, so you always have to be careful writing about people in zero G because you can't write that they do the same things that they do in non-zero G. You have to be careful about that. I really like the idea of smart systems, but not artificially intelligent systems. So there's a lot of sensors and things and you can get readouts for them, but it's up to a person to interpret them. There's no voice on their shoulder that's saying, this is what I believe is happening here, kind of thing. So it leaves the human element in there. This one is actually in the Derelict Project universe because I refer to pickers, which is what I call the pirates basically in the Derelict Project universe. But he goes into this ship, it's not responding, and he's on patrol, and it's his job to check these things out, mark them, put up a beacon, get people to pull them in, or maybe even help people out if they need it. And he drops into the ship. It's very empty. There's still air, but there's nothing running, which is weird because people usually don't let things go all the way to zero on fuel and stuff like that. There's sounds that are happening. He gets the ship kind of started up a little bit, but the ship isn't perfectly working. The lights don't work, stuff like that. I don't know. What do you want me to talk about regarding this story specifically?
I just brought it up as one thing that you've been doing for Iron Age.
Yeah,
you don't have to go in too much detail, but it
was fun. Because I wanted to flip the infestation idea kind of around a little bit, which is kind of what I did with this. There is an infestation, but then the person becomes the infestation. So
that was
just kind of a little.
It was a fun way to end it, I think.
Yeah, it was fun. When I realized that's how I wanted to end it, I was like, cool, this is the way to end it, and I think it worked pretty well.
I'm a big fan of not ending stories outright, and just having an ending that is just a fun ending, but it's there could be more someday. There doesn't have to be though. I'm pretty sure everything I've ever wrote has had that kind of ending. I've got a couple of reviews, my review for the Rackin' on Amazon. Someone said, "Can't wait to read the sequel," and I was like, "Well, I wasn't considering writing one until now," but it actually does end on this note where it's oh, there's something else going on here, and every chapter was kind of its own story in that book.
Yeah,
several of the chapters had endings that implied that there was more to this universe.
Well, of course, and that's what I mean. In general, you don't finish a story with all of the characters dying.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're modern television or Marvel.
Yeah. But it's fun to, you always want to leave a little bit of an open end, or at least consider that more things could be happening in this world. Because it's important to do that just when you're writing a story, because you don't want to have everything be perfectly self-contained. You want your story to have the feel that things are going on elsewhere that aren't related to the story, but are happening. And so,
you want people to feel like there is an actual world that this takes place in, and this isn't the whole sum of everything in this universe.
Well, so, one of the things I love to do is I love to have my characters, refer to something outside of the story. So I have an unpublished story where one of the main things that happens is that, 2 or 3 of the characters get into a detailed discussion about a couple of movies that they just recently saw, right? I guess it's not really a detailed discussion, but it gets mentioned. And so, like, there's a world where, this person who is here and is, a ship's engineer. Oh, he likes movies. And so he went and saw this movie. And, he talks to this other person about this movie that he saw last week, It's I mean, even the first book in the Nero Wolf series doesn't start with Wolf meeting Archie. They already have an established partnership as detective and assistant.
Right. Yeah.
So you can do a lot more with. You could write that origin story, but you don't have to, right? You can leave it up to people's imaginations. You can choose to write it later. You can choose to hint at little things that happened. I mean, it helps to make it indefinite because then you can create like things that happened in the past that they can refer to, and they'll have common knowledge of it. And so it's like, oh yeah, I remember 3 years ago we had this problem when I was working with Wolf, but like there's no book for that.
Yeah,
it just
that's one of them things that makes those Nero Wolf books so great.
Yeah, because because you just drop in, and every book he introduces Fritz a little bit, and every book he introduces Saul a little bit, and over time these introductions of the characters are different every time, and so what they do is they fill out the character. You don't just describe Fritz as a Swiss cook, a Swiss chef, basically. No, one time you describe him as a chef, and the other time you describe him, you mentioned that he has this like kind of sad smile, or you mentioned that he has a thing from World War I, or you mentioned that he has cookbooks by the Julius Caesar's cook, or stuff like that. So you introduce the character in a different way every story, and that helps flesh out the character for you and for the reader.
Yeah, and if you're writing a book about a character, this is okay, so I have a great example for this.
Okay.
I had originally intended to write an entire novel that was kind of like The Rackin', where it was a collection of short stories featuring a character called Cash Marley.
Yes.
And I was going to start the novel with... So the premise of this story is that she's a girl who went into a haunted house and found a magical book, and she's with her best friend, and when she finds the book, the floor collapses, and her friend dies in the collapse, and she reappears as a ghost to warn Cash that she has to protect the book, because now there's a bunch of spirits that are after it, and if they get it, they can end the world somehow. I haven't even decided how that is yet, but it's just one of them things where it's like, I can run with this forever. But originally I was going to make it like one book and have several stories throughout that are going to be like slow progress of how she's been handling this situation, but with that opening chapter that explains everything. Yeah. Well, I already had the character, and I felt like writing a story for Halloween, so I used that character, wrote a Halloween short story, and now I've written 3 short stories with this character, which has helped to flesh out the character a little bit more, so it'll be even better to write it in a full-length novel format when I go to do it.
Yeah.
And not only that, but I mean, I could use all 3 of the stories in that book if I wanted to make it a full-length book. I don't have to. I can keep them as a separate thing and make everything in the book original, but I've got that content there. And that's one way you could approach writing a novel. Write a bunch of short stories with your characters first, and even publish them, and just like have them out there with, like, present it like this is already an established character. You don't really need to... I mean, you don't need to know much about Cash Marley to enjoy each individual short story. Because in every one, I'm like, oh yeah, she's got this book and she's got to protect it. That's all you need to know. You don't have to flesh out every detail when you present a new character to the world. And then you can always go back and write the novel you intended.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Like, it's possible to sit down and from scratch write a new novel with new characters. But it's a lot more, I'd say, fun and interesting to start out with some shorter works, to like see what works, see what doesn't work, especially if you're not like a super experienced writer like I am, right? I'm trying new things, I'm creating different characters, I'm seeing how they interact with other characters, I'm seeing what works, what other people seem to like, what other people seem to like less, stuff like that. So also seeing what I like writing more is a thing too. So yeah.
And you've got a good style, too, because you kind of have like that Michael Crichton writing style where you observe a lot of the things that are happening in any given situation.
Really? That's interesting. I would never have... I haven't read any Crichton in a long time, so I guess I don't know what his style is like right now, but I would not have thought of Crichton when I...
His style right now is not much because he's not around anymore, but his...
No, I get that, but like...
And I'm gonna say
I've read several of his books.
Well, yeah, but like... So, I mean, he wasn't a scientist, but he was very well read on a lot of topics. That was like... He used to talk about how he didn't like to read fiction. He would just read, like textbooks and science books and things, and somehow he still managed to become an amazing writer doing that. So the whole thing where you have to read to become a writer isn't necessarily true. It's very good practice, but it's like a different writing style. So he's got both a technical style, but like a good touch of like hamming it up, kind of.
Yeah, okay.
But when he writes his stuff, he's observing very little details that didn't necessarily need to be there, but still make the story better. Because that you're in this universe where it's adhering to a strict science, even if that science isn't particularly nailed down. There's enough detail to make it feel like it's nailed down.
I mean, I love writing hard sci-fi because I'm a scientist. And
yes,
like it makes me happy.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, What the Soul Still Fears has a good chunk of hard science in it. Where I talk about the Michelson-Morley experiment, and the luminiferous ether, and how you would measure that, what it would mean. It's fun to write hard science. I mean, I just looked it up. Michael Crichton had an MD, so like he was very very well accomplished with like understanding technical stuff. So I can understand that he would want to include that in his writing. I mean, like the Andromeda Strain is a great example. He has a ton of technical language in there.
Well,
but he does a really good job.
That's probably why that's my favorite book that he ever did, was because that was just like
so good.
That was his specialty.
Yeah,
even more so than things like Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I mean, Jurassic Park has a decent amount of technical stuff too. I mean, the thing about it is that once you start to understand this technical stuff, you start to be less afraid to like look into other technical stuff that you're not necessarily like qualified to know about. But then it's a fiction story, so you can get your facts from a couple of books, or even Wikipedia can help sometimes. And then you just put together what you know and you create the story, and you just try to make sure it stays consistent.
Yeah, and if you're someone like me who doesn't research the stuff when you go to write it, it's still important to make it seem like there's some consistency to everything going on. I mean,
definitely.
I'll do the whole spaceship thing where it's like, in fact, an entire basis of one of the chapters of the Racken is that the anti-gravity wasn't working right in one of the stories, and so the ship was basically sideways instead of upright for everyone on board.
Right.
And so it's like, yeah, there's not really, a hard science book probably wouldn't have anti-gravity beyond like a revolving space station where everyone was sort of swung to the outer edges, and that's how they mimicked gravity.
I mean, that's just what hard science means, unfortunately, right? Like, because the problem with artificial gravity is the problem with artificial gravity is not caused by something like centrifugal force. Is that it is a way to produce a
perpetual motion machine.
A perpetual motion machine. And so like this is one of those things where like this is why it helps to have a little bit of a grounding in science, because because what you should be aware of is that you don't create any perpetual motion machines in your story. That's the idea, right?
Yeah.
And the closer you get to that, the harder it is, basically. But like, I mean, like this is why that last theorem book got to me. Because they're like, you put water in, and hot water and motion comes out. And someone figured it out. It's like, that's not, you made a perpetual motion machine. You can't put that in a hard sci-fi story and expect people who are knowledgeable about anything to miss that.
Yeah, and if you're not writing hard science, like you do kind of want to. Okay, so I cheat things really, really,
Well,
really.
so it's important that you have the right tone. Hard sci-fi, you know, I have. How can I put this? Something from the way that you write your stuff implies that it's not hard sci-fi, and so my suspension of disbelief goes wider. It's when people start writing these like highly technical like details about things, and then they don't really think them through. That's when things are the worst. Like if
Yeah.
like having anti-gravity or artificial gravity is fine. As long as the tone of the story is not one where like someone is like, I wonder why this and this and this, and it's like, but I wonder why we don't have enough energy to do this. And it's like, you have a perpetual motion machine right there.
Yeah, you have to keep it in the realm of what's science fiction and what's hard science fiction. You have to. You can't present everything as being really technical, but then like the technical stuff doesn't make any sense whatsoever when you actually look at even it. Like I don't even know that much about a lot of this, but I read that book, The Three Body Problem, and I was just like, there is so much wrong with this, and I'm not even a scientist. And it was trying so hard to make it look like it was this hard sci-fi book, and I'm just like, the worst part about it, of course, was that when the scientists realized that they were having problems with their research, that they all offed themselves. I was like, what? like the reaction of a scientist to seeing something that they weren't expecting is immediately suicide.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's like, I mean, like it's like, okay, so let me put it this way. If you want to write science stuff in your story, talk to people who know some science stuff. Even if you don't know that much science stuff, talk to people who know some science stuff, because if you don't, you're going to end up with like, man, you're going to end up with this kind of like nonsense where it's like, a scientist, my experiment didn't work, I must kill myself.
But if you want to write stuff that's science fiction and fun, but not hard science, then... So like, one of the tricks I use is to layer things with so much stuff going on in the story that it doesn't matter that the science doesn't make sense, because... take for instance, if I wanted to actually explain, which I don't, but if I wanted to explain anti-gravity on spaceships in my stories, I would just be like, well, they have this thing called stretch fields that they're basically these things that they use to move from one point in a galaxy to another. So like teleportation,
okay,
basically.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing about the stretch field, which is why that's why it's brilliant. So it is implied that energy is required to maintain a stretch field. Therefore, you can state that you no longer have a perpetual motion machine, because the amount of energy that you would need to create a stretch field that would produce a perpetual motion machine is not possible to produce. Something like that.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that, I mean, you don't even need to go that far if you're just writing science fiction. You just want you want to maintain an illusion of some semblance of order to the universe. You don't have to explain anti-gravity. People can just accept that, okay, there's anti-gravity. We'll just gloss over the whole perpetual motion thing as long as the rest of the universe...
Well, you didn't, though, is my point.
I did in my story, because I never explained how the anti-gravity works. If I was going to, I would have said that it has to do with the teleportation fields actually using gravity from a larger object to stabilize the gravity on a ship.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean... there are certain tropes that are generally accepted by audiences. Artificial gravity is one of them, but like, it always has reasonable limits, I guess you would put it. Like you can't. Well, I mean,
I don't know. Star Trek has tractor beams.
Tractor beams are not. They don't move things like really, really fast. They move things slow. There's kind of a veneer of believability there.
Yeah.
Like you had something and it's creating this force and you're pulling on a thing like that I can believe that, but like, I don't know. It's a question of how. Okay, so like, let me put it this way: if you had written a bunch of books, like a whole bunch of books about people in spaceships that didn't have artificial gravity, and then all of a sudden in the same universe you suddenly introduce artificial gravity. And you're like, and it's like easy, right? It's like, I just have a little thing that fits in the palm of my hand, and it just creates a gravity field. If you did that, that would be bad because you'd have a volume of stories before that where, well, why didn't they just use artificial gravity? Like, that would make everything way more comfortable. Not just comfortable, but like healthier too. So, yeah, I mean, it's about introducing the elements of softness early on and not trying to like hide them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and it was important for me not to have it was important for me to have gravity on the ship when I was writing that story because I wanted people to be able to run frightened from things.
Sure.
I didn't want to have them strapping on like a vapor pack and just like scooting their way Attack on Titan style down a hallway.
Oh, so I have I use like I have so the way that I do that is I have people like pushing off of things or like pulling themselves around corners and that kind of stuff. Yeah, in the book I'm working on right now, that happens in like it was supposed to be the first chapter, but then I liked it better as a third chapter, so
yeah,
it went to the third chapter. But anyway,
and there's nothing wrong with that. I just liked the imagery of someone running more than I liked because there's actually a lot of fun things you can do with the idea that someone is reliant on a gadget or on their rate of pull against a rail down a hallway or something.
The thing I like about
that can build tension.
The thing I like about it is that it's so like uncontrolled, or it's like easy to like make a mistake, and once you've made a mistake, you're totally screwed, right? So I don't know. Yeah, you can do it. It's fun either way, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's another discussion to be had at some point. All the fun you can do with science fiction, because I know I've got a level of the level of technology in the various stories I write jumps all over the place, and I kind of have to create this illusion that everything fits into one certain level of technology because I try to make a lot of things easy on the characters during spaceflight, because if I don't, then the rest of the universe doesn't make sense. So, like, there's not too much to worry about if someone starts to drift off in space, as long as they're wearing their spacesuit. They're pretty much safe. They've got the ability to get back to the ship, or at the very least, like I have a whole insurance scheme in one of the chapters where you're insured using a teleportation field to refill an air tank. And I built some tension using that by having the character so afraid of moving at one point that she turns that off just in case it's making too much noise, and one of the characters has to be like, just make sure to turn that back on before you die.
But there's a lot of fun ways to build tension like that by playing around with technology and stuff, and how it fails or how it works, or it's just, you just got to keep it consistent, and like if there's something crazy that you're going to add, you just got to ease the reader in a little bit.
Yeah, and don't necessarily overdo it in the explanation either.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Don't. It's there's a saying, right? Don't sell past the close.
Yeah.
Right? It's that. It's like, they have anti-gravity. Okay. And here's how it works. No, stop. So what they do is they take two hamsters. No, stop. I told you to stop. They put them in a wheel. No. I told you to stop. And the wheels go in the opposite direction. No. I'm telling you, stop explaining this right now. It's not going to help. No. And then the two wheels moving opposite to each other creates a gravity field that goes through a crystal. Okay. No, we don't need crystals. Just stop.
Selling past the Rube Goldberg device.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you're gonna...
Okay, here's a good example. Since we're talking about Iron Age, the last Iron Age prompt was one called The Companion.
Ooh, yes.
And they had a picture of this guy sitting at a table, kind of looked like a doll with big, scary doll eyes. And
yes.
I wrote a story, the premise of which, I think we talked about this on the last one, because I was like, I had been on Twitter where someone was complaining about how all the comic companies take their characters and kill them off, and then they bring them back as if nothing happened.
Right.
And I was like, well, I could write a story where that works. So
of course.
I wrote this story.
You have creativity.
Yeah. Well, I wrote this story where these characters are... A character wakes up, she has no idea who she is, and there's this other character that's explaining to her, it's like, oh yeah, we're a bunch of superheroes, basically. They were mutants, because the person that was on Twitter or whatever was complaining specifically, I think, about the X-Men always coming back. It's like, okay, fine, they're mutants, whatever. They're basically superheroes. And he's explaining that they were all cursed by a necromancer. And they're all immortal, but every time one of them does physically die, they'll come back, but they won't have any memories, except for, like, basics of their instincts. Like, you know, they can talk and they can recognize objects and things, but they don't really hold on to anything specific about their past life.
Yes.
So, this... I'll just go ahead and spoil the ending on this one, just so I can get to
It's a free short story.
Yeah.
Just go read it if... Yeah.
Yeah, just so I can get to my point. I mean, it's like 5 people are going to read it, but...
Well, no, what I'm saying is that if you were listening to this right now and you want, stop, go read the story. I'll put a link in the description, and you can see it, and then you'll hear the explanation now. That's what pausing does.
Okay, well, that works too. Then I guess
Yeah.
I should mention the title is The Button Man.
Yes, the story is called The Button Man. It's an excellent story. You should go read it. I'll have a link in the description.
But if you don't mind spoilers, and God knows I love talking about my stories.
Or if you have paused the podcast and read the story, which takes like 3 minutes to read, and come back and hit play.
If you've paused, you aren't hearing any of this right now.
Well, you're hearing it now.
And this is how you do time travel stories, ladies and gentlemen. So this person that's with her is like this little guy that looks like a doll. I basically went with the image, kind of like the image that they gave for the prompt. Yeah. And he's one of the people that's cursed by this necromancer, but he's the only one who has never died. And he takes her into this safe house where they store all of their memories. And he's going to re-educate her on who she was. Dragging her along, explaining, basically giving you the rundown of what's going on in this universe that I've created solely for this one story.
Yeah.
And as they get closer and closer to this inner sanctum...
To make this one specific point about how stupid DC and Marvel authors are.
Yes. As they get closer to this inner sanctum, she does have a few suspicions, but by the time you actually get there and it's like, oh yeah, these are your memories... What I tried to do is make it seem like, okay, yeah, he's a little suspicious, but then it's like, no, he's cool. Everything's cool.
No, the arc totally works. Like I was like, a little suspicious. He's probably cool.
Yeah. So then after it's pretty much been established that everything's fine and he's just doing his job, another character shows up and says you can't trust him, and then explains how they had all been fooled into thinking that this supervillain was the one that had destroyed 3 of their headquarters, which housed all of their information, and that this was the last inner sanctum that had all of their memories. And it turns out that this one guy who had never died before, was the only one who had never lost his memories. He had spent over 100 years fuming at the fact that their greatest villain used to be one of their friends and had saved the world, and that they just allowed him to become this great villain and never tried to stop him or never tried to kill him to reset his memories so that they could talk him out of doing what he's doing. And he feels really bad that they were treating the best of them like this was the bad guy to everyone. And so many of them had died and lost their memories about what originally happened that he was the only one that even remembered that this was the guy that pretty much saved us all, and we should be doing more to bring him back to our side. So he'd gone a little mad and spent years and years secretly plotting to bring down everyone, to kill everyone and erase their memories so that it was a full reset.
Yeah.
And he finally gets to the point where it's just these 3 people left, and he feels a little bad for the one girl that's with them. He doesn't want to completely erase her memories because she's innocent in all of this. So he had hidden away a cache of, like, her files with some people he knew that were going to bring it to her after he finished the job. And this other hero that shows up is one that everyone is convinced is pretty much invincible. But what he didn't know, because he had at one point died, is that this little guy that they called the Button Man, he knew his one weakness because the original hero that turned bad guy on them had once told him that's his only weakness. And so he actually had this all set up to where he would draw him into this last place, and then he would use this weakness on him, and then he just was going to blow up the last of their records. And so basically what I did here is I created a universe set up a nice little plot where this one character knew everything and nobody else really understood what was going on. And at the end of it, once everything is finished, I still have this entire universe that I could always come back to and do anything I want with these characters, which is the proper way you handle characters being killed and coming back. But that wasn't the point I originally wanted to make with this story, and now I can't remember what the point was. Why did I bring this up again?
Well,
I guess there's no way to really rewind and remember why.
I mean, we could pause the recording and sync up again. And
No. But like,
I mean,
it's still another point that can be made. It's like use some creativity to do the things you want to do. If you want to use characters that you have killed off previously, find an intriguing way to bring them back. There's a million ways you can bring a dead character back. Use one of them. Don't just be like, yeah, they're back now.
Well, yeah, I mean,
even Dragon Ball had the Dragon Balls. I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was gonna. So when you were talking about artificial gravity earlier, I was gonna talk about Dragon Ball because I was like, well, it's not like they make the artificial gravity like 100 times Wait, never mind.
Dragon Ball Z starts off with a pretty big suspension of disbelief.
Dragon Ball's a fantasy story.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, they're not. I don't think they're trying to be hard sci-fi.
At no point do I ever feel even the slightest hint that Akira Toriyama is going for a hard sci-fi environment.
It's like he actually has like one day when Akira Toriyama is gone, like 30 years from now, someone's going to be digging through his old files and he's going to have this tome of explanation on how the capsules work.
I mean, that'd be awesome.
Even funnier would be like someone gets this and just like, oh my god, this will actually work. Like he actually
Toriyama
developed
was like
this, and then
this amazing inventor, and he just never applied it.
He preferred just to make manga.
Well, he's like no. You know how it works is that he comes up with the idea and he comes up with a way that it would work, but the fact that nobody else has come up with it leads him to believe that it couldn't work, and so he gives up on it. And he's like, I'll just put it in the story.
Yeah. He couldn't get anyone to sign off on funding the research, so he's just like, eh.
Right. He's like, I'll just become a multimillionaire by being the creator of Dragon Ball.
I mean, one or the other. Either works.
Either or.
Did you like the ending to the Button Man, by the way? I figured you'd like that one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the story itself was pretty darn good, and then the just the little Near Wolf nod at the end is well, I mean, I think I was telling you should get the guy who played Nicholas Lossoff to play to read the Button Man's lines for the audiobook version of that story.
That would be pretty awesome.
You should make it. Like you could check him out and see if he's on Cameo or something, and be like, here, I want you to read these lines. I have a story, and I'm giving it away for free, but I'm gonna record this short story, and I want you to voice this character's lines for a specific reason. It's because I want you to say this line at the end. Say the line. And it's been like 20 years since he said that line, and so he'll be like, someone really cared that I said I know everything there is to know about buttons at one point.
Yeah, he says the line and then he like draws back for a minute and just sits there like wait a minute.
wait a minute. Yeah, he has this sense of deja vu, and he's like, wait. Oh, that'd be beautiful.
I'm
Speaking of Nero Wolf.
Yes.
This is completely non-writing based, but there's an Italian Nero Wolf series that I watched an episode of, and it was quite good.
Yeah, I heard they were really good. I have not been able to watch any of them yet. So
I will say that there's a bunch of changes that had to be made to put Nero Wolf in Rome, but
which is fine.
to make him a mustachioed Italian man. But the one thing that really got me is that the background music. The guy who did the background music for that show must have listened to the 2001-2002 series, because a lot of the same themes show up, and they wouldn't otherwise. So,
I thought the Italian one came first.
No, the Italian one's 2012.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's relatively recent.
There was a 1980s Nero Wolf show.
Yes, it was a TV series in the US. Yeah,
I tried watching it. It was a little boring. wasn't bad. It just didn't hit anywhere near like the 2001 version.
Well, I mean, the Nero Wolfe stories are some of the most fun books ever. Like the most fun books that aren't like off the wall, crazy, goofy stuff.
It's hard to do detective novels that are fun, and they were really fun.
Yeah, like they weren't the kind of detective novels where you stop and really try to solve it kind of thing, but they were the ones that keep you thinking until the very end kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's very different from like the Agatha Christie style or the what was the other guy? Not Sherlock Holmes, but
Lupin.
Who else wrote? The
Arsène Lupin.
Arsène Lupin and Maurice LeBlanc. Yeah, very very different, but like the Wolf stories are just like they're. I can just read them over and over again. I don't know why.
I mean, it's probably the best detective formula there is. There's a lot of good ones. Like Columbo had a really good formula.
Yeah.
The Maurice LeBlanc stories, I mean, if you want to talk about another fun version of detective novels, Arsène Lupin, while technically not a detective, a lot of what happens in them plays out like a detective novel.
Well, yeah, it's the inverse detective story.
Yeah.
Which is fine. The point is that there's mystery and that the reader feels interested in the mystery, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So the way that you do the way that LeBlanc does that is he makes interesting, colorful characters that do outrageous and what's the word, like whimsical things. He's always switching something up. He's always pulling the rug out from under you. And you can't do that in like Christie doesn't do that. Christie creates a narrative, and there's characters, and there's stuff, and there's data, and you have, say, Poirot in there, and he's writing things down. He's giving you notes of his that help you figure out what he's thinking, and they're much more like they're not as fun, but they're still really really good stories.
Yeah. Yeah, they can be a bit dry at times compared to things like Nero Wolfe, but they're telling a really good mystery usually.
Yeah. And something where you probably will not figure out the solution at the very end. I mean, And Then There Were None is all about someone who wants to create the impossible mystery. So that was kind of her thing of creating like a very complicated mystery where a couple of things fit together in ways that you wouldn't think of. So anyway, not sure why I got onto that.
Oh, because we love talking about detective novels, and there's no hope for us.
That's true. Well, then there's other detective stories like So the more recent publications, like the paperback republications of the Nero Wolfe stories, all have forewords written by other mystery authors, and one of them referred me. It was the foreword for The Doorbell Rang, the one where Nero Wolfe basically gets into a scrap with the FBI, and the guy writing the foreword said that he thinks that The Doorbell Ring has the best ending of any detective story, possibly only comparable to the ending of, I think it's called 8 Million Ways to Die by Lawrence Block. And so I picked that book up too, and that's a very different book. That's much more like
technical mystery.
No, not noir. It's very not technical.
Oh, so it's like a crime book more than a detective book.
No. I mean, it's a detective book. It's just not. It's not. It's more about the characters than the mystery. If that makes sense. Like the main character is a detective and he's doing detective stuff, but like you don't really even care about the mystery. It's all about the characters and their interactions. It's a very different kind of story. But yeah, it was a fun read too. So I'll have to read some more Lawrence Block one of these days.
Oh, that's a new one I can add to my list.
I almost put that into What the Soul Still Fears. In the first draft, the main character is sitting and reading a Lawrence Block story, or Lawrence Block book during part of the story. And when he gets a phone call or something like that, he just mentioned it, but I took it out of the final draft.
I mean, that you should have kept that in, be honest. I think that's pretty awesome. But,
It didn't... I looked at it, and it didn't seem like it fit.
Yeah. Yeah, that can happen.
Like if his interest in mystery stories had been a bigger part of the story, which I could have done, but, like, I just didn't. So, it's okay.
I just remembered what my point was about the story.
Fantastic.
God, because we were talking about how you don't want to oversell things.
Yes.
So, part of the plot of the Button Man was him being able to kill every single one of the mutants so that they would all lose their memories and nobody would be able to really, fix anything.
Yeah.
So instead of sitting down and explaining how he managed to get everyone in the same place at all time, I just had the story start in the middle of a disaster where it's heavily implied that he'd been planning this for decades. And so naturally he would have everything ready when it was time. And he even jokes at the end about how hard it was to make sure even the people that had retired were still somewhere where he could get to them and make all this happen all at the same time.
Yeah.
And, if I had actually tried to come up with a reasonable explanation for how he got all of these people together to do this, it just wouldn't have made as good a story. It would have been pointless.
Well, yeah, you would have drawn it out too far. If you had tried to turn it into,
I mean, it would have had to have been a book at that point.
Well, like, yes and no, because you probably could have done it in a relatively short number of pages, but it would have dwarfed the rest of the story, and to no real effect.
Yeah,
right. Like,
especially when the point was different than that.
Well, like it's like the point of an Agatha Christie story is that you are trying to solve the mystery along with Poirot. The point of the Button Man is not that you were trying to understand how the Button Man got everybody killed at the same time.
Yeah,
like that's an element of the story, but like. It is a fait accompli. It's already happened.
It would have been overselling to explain it. Is the point? So
well, it would have you would have had to draw a map, and you would have had to you would have had to draw because like in
I would have had to create characters just so I could be like, yeah, there's tons of characters here that all have to get at this other place. When in reality, I only needed three characters and a reference to one character to make my point.
That's the other thing. Yeah. Well, like I'm imagining you because like if you read Murder on the Orient Express, right? There's like drawings of the train cars and listings of where everybody's births were and all that stuff, and it's just like you could have added that, but it wouldn't have got. I mean, the point was to all those elements are beside the point of the point you were trying to make. You know what I mean?
Which was a hard jab at DC and Marvel.
Well, not necessarily at DC and Marvel, but at the specific writers who fall back on the least thoughtful solutions to any problem, right?
I mean, it depends. Like a lot of times, those authors are probably told, "Hey, we want this character in this comic for marketing reasons, or because they're going to be in a movie." And it's just like, well,
yeah, and that's the writer's job is to make that work.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And to not do the laziest possible thing.
It's just like, hey, remember that character that can magically resurrect people anytime they want that we created? Let's just use that again. It's like, okay.
Well,
what is the impact that this is going to have on the rest of the characters that saw this character die? And what is the character that they saw die going to be like when he's like, wait, so you could have done this anytime and you waited till now? It's like, yeah, we had to make a new movie.
Didn't think of it. We have the power to revive people from death. But
that's brilliant. There should be a character in Marvel Comics whose superpower is specifically that when a certain studio decides they want to make a movie, they can resurrect the right person for that movie. Why am I so much better at this than everyone that works at these comic companies?
Well, like it's weird. Like I don't understand how these people got the positions they got when everything is just the laziest possible thing. It's very strange to me.
I have had enough jobs in my life to know that almost all of that is either not cronyism, that's not the word, nepotism. It's either nepotism or people who are just bitter and really want to screw someone else. That's how people like that get those jobs. I'm sure there's other reasons here and there, but I think that's the majority of it. And that's just based off of my
personal experience.
Yeah, that's just like, shoot, what collar am I? Blue collar? Which one is the factory jobs?
The blue collar.
Yeah. That's just my blue collar experience. Because that happens at the at the bottom of the rung too. That's just like I saw.
Sure, yeah.
I've worked at jobs where
This guy can't do this basic unskilled labor job. Make him a manager.
Yeah,
oh.
There's that too. And then the people that have been doing the job just fine get all these new rules and everything falls apart, and they blame the people that couldn't switch to the new rules right away. And then,
well, so there might actually be something to talk about here for a second, because I remember we had a conversation before, and you made a very interesting point that when these rules get handed down, right?
Yeah.
That a lot of people complain about the rules and don't follow them, and then then what ends up happening is that they get more bad rules that they have to ignore and hide the fact that they're ignoring. And you said that what people ought to do is just follow the rules and show that the results of these rules are bad.
Oh yeah, this is actually. Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
This into. Well, I'm just thinking, like, would this be something that we could pull into a writing topic?
I'll try to think of a way that we can make it about writing. I mean, really, we wouldn't be talking about writing at that point. We'd be talking about we would be talking about like the corporate process of writing, I guess, or writing as a business and things that.
No. I'm thinking like this, like if you think of yourself as handing down rules to a world that you're creating.
Oh, okay.
You see where I'm going with this? That like when you think like if you have rules, you should see what their effects are. You should give it a longer view than whatever short-term thing you want to just accomplish right now, right? Like I think that's where I'm going with this, is that like one of the things that we both enjoy economics, and one of the things about economics is that you look at the immediate effects of a policy as well as the unseen long-term effects of a policy. And so if you have something that you put into your writing and you only put it in there because it needs to be there right now, and you don't pay attention to what it does to the rest of the world, to the rest of the story, you're making a mistake. You're making the same mistake that people make when they hand down rules, and the people that are supposed to follow the rules don't, but hide that they're not, and get the results and aim at results rather than following the rules.
Yeah, you'll end up with a bunch of scientists offing themselves.
I
can't get over how stupid that was. That might be the stupidest thing I've ever read in my entire life. It's way up there. Like I'm imagining like. No, you don't even know. You didn't. Did you read the book?
No, I did not.
You don't understand. This guy is playing pool with another scientist, and this scientist explains how they observed something that shouldn't be physically possible, and because of that, he breaks down in tears and starts talking about how he doesn't have anything to live for anymore. And this is after this is the moment where you're presented with the reason for why about a dozen scientists up to this point have committed suicide. He's just like, we don't want to live anymore because the world doesn't work properly. And it's like, what are you talking about? That is the exact moment that scientists would be like, let's figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
He's like breaking down in tears, and it's just like, this is not how science works.
Well, so this is why I said it earlier, but if you want to write about scientists, talk to a scientist. If you like, I just made a recent post where there was some author who was like saying some really stupid things about guns, and then Larry Correa, who we've mentioned in an earlier episode when we went through his authors alphabetical author list.
Yeah.
He was like, "No, I know a whole lot about guns, and this is all wrong, and you don't know what you're talking about." And like, I posted, I'm like, "Look, if you don't know about guns and you're an author and you want to know about guns, go talk to an author who knows about guns, because we love to teach people about guns." Like, I was like, "Yeah, you came to me and you're like, I need like a good gun for like this thing." I'm like, "Well, what about this?" And I showed you like the Colt Python. You're like, "That's perfect. That's what I want." And so it showed up in your story.
Yeah. The snub nose.
Yeah.
I'm actually I had forgotten about that because I hadn't read it in a while.
Yeah.
And there's a sequel I'm doing to Sylvia's Saga at some point where I'm going to bring that gun back. It's going to get handed down to her daughter.
Okay. Awesome.
There's but yeah, that's...
Just remember what it is. That's all. And if you don't remember, let me know, and I can remind you.
Well, I mean, I put it in the book. I can look it up.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the time when I'm doing stuff that involves weapons, I like to invent the weapons myself. But every once in a while, it's just like, someone will appreciate that somewhere.
Oh, I mean, like that was so Larry Correia got his start by writing effectively fan fiction on gun forums, and so there were a bunch of people who were writing like little short stories, and it wasn't ever intended to be like even like published for like people to read necessarily. It was just like on a forum, and like it was kind of like I'm gonna include this because these people will like to see this, and this is this guy's favorite gun, so I'll put one of those in there, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and it's fine to do that.
I mean, you definitely want to use the things that you know, and if you don't know it and you want to use it, ask. Just it's not hard.
And even if you don't ask, think about it a little bit.
I promise you, if you have a question about guns, there is someone out there who will want to answer your question. The only people I know that are more enthusiastic about answering questions like that are people that want to answer questions about anime.
And I do both. I do guns, anime, and science.
Yeah, so I mean, we got the trifecta here.
The tridefecta.
It's kind of funny. I have access to the best resource that someone could possibly ask for two of those three subjects at least. And yet I'm the one person who pretty much comes up with everything I can on my own. It's ridiculous.
I mean, it's a creative process, so you should definitely be creating things on your own. That's the goal. But like, yeah,
there are people who would kill to have a friend like you. It's like I know a physicist. I can ask him anything about physics. I'm writing a science fiction story. Does he call Rudy? No.
Never. But like, I mean, like, I don't know. It was one of those things that where, my first novella came out when I was in my darkest point of grad school. Am I going to graduate? Am I going to get out of here with anything more than I came in, other than debt?
I remember that nightmare.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, like
I remember talking to you on the phone, and you're like, I'm not sure if I'm going to get my PhD because what was he called? You're not your director. You're
my advisor.
Your advisor, yeah.
Well, I mean, it wasn't entirely because of my advisor, but like it was a huge cluster, you know what, and like it was it was rough.
It was messed up. Like, it was like everything was not your fault.
Pretty much. I mean, like, I don't know. It's when you're trying to do scientific research, it's hard to pin blame. You know what I mean? Like maybe if I had done different things different ways, but like at the same time, everything seemed to be stacked against me, and I when I tried to get help, it was not forthcoming, kind of thing. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, but like the like it was like 3 or 4 days after I finally defended and handed in my thesis, and I'm like, I'm actually going to graduate. It was like 3 days later, I had taken a bunch of people out to the range, and like we stopped at it was like a McDonald's or something on the way back, and like I found myself like happily discussing physics with them and like talking about all the cool physics stuff that I had learned and that had been going on recently in the world of physics. And I was like, wait, I love this again. What the hell happened? So yeah, it's like when people are passionate about stuff like that, in general, as long as they haven't been like crushed under the thumb of it, they'll be happy to discuss it. And so like learn what other people in your circle know about and pick their brains if you have to, because it helps.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people. I followed a lot of different writers' circles and writers' forums at one point.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I wasn't happy with most of them was that nobody really seemed to want advice, which is why it's so nice to be doing this now. But I'm not exactly someone who makes money writing, so, if just to look at me, it'd be like, well, I mean, this guy isn't a successful writer, why would I take advice from him? But on the other hand, there's people that genuinely ask for advice, and then you give it to them, and they're like, well, I can't do that. And it's really hard to find the people that actually want good advice on things to do. I mean...
Well, I mean, there's also a shortage of people who want to give good advice somehow. Like, I mean... so this is a common thing. Once you get big, you don't have time to help other people as much. You know what I mean? Like right now when I'm in like the beginning of my writing adventure is the time when I want to talk about writing and help other writers the most. But like hypothetically, in some future date that I have like a bunch of real deadlines and people who are waiting for my input and stuff like that. And I actually have to do it, or else other people are going to have real trouble. I might not have time to give advice, like to discuss stuff like this. And the same is probably true of you too. Like if tomorrow someone from like I don't know, what's a publishing company, Penguin. If someone called you tomorrow from Penguin and was like, "We need you to write a sequel to Good Guy," and here's a $50,000 advance.
So after I laughed and called a different publisher and said, "Hey, I just got an offer from Penguin, but I don't like them."
I mean hypothetically.
I know what you mean.
But like,
and I'll never get a deal with them now. That's for sure.
That's on our cancel list for this episode. We haven't been canceled by enough people this episode.
Yeah, you're right. We were canceled by Penguin now.
Penguin.
But no, that is DC, true. I think that's mostly true for people. Like if you get a book deal with a big publisher, you're going to actually have a schedule that you're going to want to keep. If you do well as an independent writer,
have to keep.
Yeah, you're going to have to keep it. If you do well as an independent writer, you can still be free to give that advice, which is fun to give.
Well, like the thing is that you start once your time starts to have a significant value, you start to be more judicious about how you spend it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But it's one of them things where it's like, yeah, you would have to give up pretty much all of it to be like a regularly published person for a certain publisher. Independent, not so much, but you're also not making as much money. So, like you said, your time is not necessarily.
You're working more too, in general. Yeah. So, like once you start to, I don't know. I feel like if at some point people started buying my stuff, I'd be working a lot harder on it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I work at like I have kind of like an even workflow that I like to do with my stuff, which is why I like the independent stuff way better. I mean, look, it would be great to have a publisher that you work for and get the regular payments for regular books, but on the same token, it's I don't think I could write my best that way, and I lost a lot of interest in being published by a company years ago. When the minute that independent publishing took off, I was just like, that sounds a lot more like me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. I would probably take a contract.
I mean, if someone called you tomorrow and said, "Here's $50,000 to write a sequel to Good Guy,"
yes, I would. I would even take that from Penguin.
Right? It'd be worth it. Like,
but I mean, that was a 230,000 word book. There is no way they would have published a 230,000 word book. That book would not have been as good.
Penguin publishes big stuff. Like Penguin had that was kind of why I thought of them, because they actually do publish large stuff. Like I'm pretty sure they have a War and Peace and all that good stuff. So, I mean, like the alternative would be like
they would have to come to me. I couldn't go to them.
Well, you could, but you'd have to have an agent. And that costs a lot and all that good stuff. I mean, like the people that you and I probably would be aiming to publish with is probably more like Baen Books or something like that. They're a little bit more open-minded.
Yeah. Or oh geez, I forgot their name. I'll look up some publishers. I have been out of the loop for too long. I used to know so many of them. I used to get those writer's guides that told you places you could publish. Well,
that's also a good thing to do. Like
yeah, I think we talked about that on a previous episode.
We did mention it. Yeah. It's a totally different game. There's plenty of places to send stuff. You just need to looking for places and then writing things are two different elements. So
yeah, it's time consuming to look for places too, and don't forget you're going to get lots of rejection letters. You may get the occasional first time they take it, but that is not the norm. So don't feel bad.
Yeah, that's very true.
The Rackin' was turned down from publishing. The letter I got back said, "We like the story, but we're pretty much competing for people's beer money, so this just won't work for us."
Oh,
I don't even remember who that was with. I wonder if I still have that letter.
What beer money is gonna? What do they think people would rather put beer money at?
I really don't. I mean, there's drinking in the book. Well, we talked about one of each of our Iron Age contributions.
Indeed.
What was another one that you had?
Oh,
the one you wrote right before. Well, no, you pick one since you know him more. You know him better. You are more familiar with your own writing.
I really liked the broken home that I did for the.
Oh yeah, the one where they had to run outside of it.
Run outside of what?
The guy had to get everyone outside of the house.
No, that was get everyone outside. That was a way old story. Am I? No, the broken home is the one I wrote for the Outlanders prompt, the one that had like the iron airship in the picture.
Did I miss that one? I feel like I read something called The Broken Home. I'm sure I did. Well, describe it. I'll know if you did. So talk about it.
So this one was cool because like the picture that is the prompt kind of shows like two men in like suits, and one of them has a top hat, and they're like standing on like a barren area, and there's like an airship behind them and stuff like that. And instead of like focusing on the actual image, I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna use this in like the loosest sense that I could possibly use it. I'm just gonna make a story that I want to make that kind of has a couple of these elements in it, but they're not really forefront. So I wrote a story about someone buying Earth at auction.
How did I not read that one? I guess I wasn't keeping up on your stuff as well as I thought. That sounds great.
So this is the one that I wrote. What was it? When did I post this? October 6th.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago. That was that prompt.
Yeah. So basically, it starts out with the guy buying Earth at auction, and basically Earth. After people got away from Earth, there was no way for Earth to like keep a hold on the people that had gotten away, and so Earth basically turned into this insular empire, and then eventually the empire collapsed and left the planet as kind of a irradiated mess. And so it's basically just about this guy buys Earth at auction, and he's just trying. Basically, he's one of the few people, in the spacefaring humanity that actually cares about history. And so it's been like 10,000 years, it's been about 10,000 years since Earth's empire collapsed, and it's just this guy, and he's just like, yeah, I bought Earth, and now we're gonna start digging around to learn about the history of the Earth Empire. It's just kind of a nice little story of them going into like the central citadel of the empire, and it kind of ends with a really simple thing, right? Like this empire had all this technology. It had command of all the billions of people on Earth. It had all these weapons, and what ended up precipitating the end of the empire was basically some guy with a knife stabbing the emperor and causing everything to go to go crazy in its final stages of collapse. And that was it.
I need to go back and read that, because that sounds like that is right up my alley. Collapsing empires is I am all about that.
Oh, I really liked describing everything that they were walking in, like because it's basically like a big military base big old military base that they're excavating, and so they're going through and they're seeing evidence of this and seeing evidence of that, and it was a fun one to write.
Yeah, I must have. I know that because I know I did one for that prompt too, and I don't know how I missed yours unless yours went up way after. No, because I put mine up like the day before, so I must have just been working on that and I missed it.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I kind of love anything. Ever since I read At the Mountains of Madness, I love anything where someone walks into a desolate place where it's just like, there's some sense of history here. What the heck happened? It's kind of weird.
Well, so yeah, What the Soul Still Fears is definitely my homage to The Mountains of Madness.
Yeah, I really felt that was the case as I read that one. It's a good book. Everyone should read that one for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Where else do you have it up? Is it just on Smashwords that you're going to have it?
Well, so it's on Smashwords and Amazon, and it made it into the premium thing, so it'll be on Barnes & Noble and all that good stuff, too.
Oh, good stuff.
The Apple Store.
They don't sell apples.
They don't sell apples. Well, they do sell apples, just the computer's called apples, not apples themselves.
Ah, that's why I have no teeth.
I mean, maybe. I can neither confirm nor deny. I don't know. You have another. What? You did that 3-part series for Iron Age, right?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of interesting that you bring that up. So, since you brought up that Skyship one,
Yeah.
right before I started the 3-part one, I wrote the one I did for that same Skyship prompt was called Sky Ness,
Yes.
and that was just a little story about a guy who built an airship because he was convinced that the monster that everyone was seeing in the lake was not actually in the lake, it was a shadow from the sky. So they go up there and they find this monster, but because of the chemicals and heat from the airship, it condenses the matter of the monster and it falls into the lake and swims away. It ends up becoming a more solidified, dense creature. And then at the end of the story, it's revealed that they're hovering above Loch Ness. So just a simple thing like, oh, here's an alternate history of where the Loch Ness monster came from.
Yeah, nice.
I thought that was the like even more so than the Button Man. I thought that was the weakest story I ever contributed to those prompts. And they did the voting for this month recently. I think all 3 parts of that one story that you brought up were up there, which I thought was much more fun to write than Skyness.
Sure.
They completed the voting, and Skyness actually got more votes than all of those.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I understood how this works better.
Well, I mean, so you can vote for 3 things. I think that that people just read a couple of them and they say, okay, well, I liked these 3, I'll vote for these 3. It's a very informal vote. So
yeah.
But I just found it interesting that the one that I thought was the weakest was the one that seemed to garner the most attention.
No, yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, the 3 stories that I've done so far in a row, they had 3 prompts, and I wanted to do I originally wanted to do a 2-part story. And when I got to the end of the second part, I was like, well, there's no way I can do this in 2 parts. It's going to have to be 3.
Yeah.
And then the next prompt showed up, and I was like, okay, well, so far all the prompts are lining up with what I want to write, so I'm just going to keep going with it. And that worked up until the last prompt, which the last prompt was the one that I wrote the Button Man for.
Right.
It actually would have worked with what I was going to do, but right before I sat down to do the writing, they brought up another prompt. The current one is called the Harlequin. Well, actually, there's 2 now. The most current 2 are the Harlequin and...
So the way that it works is that there's multiple up at the same time. The prompt lasts for 3 weeks, but they do a new one every week.
Yeah. I think it's 2 weeks. I think they last 2 weeks, and they do a new one every week. So I started a story. I took the 2 pretty much almost main characters from The Good Guy. I took Tammy Nitbar, the mute narrator, and I took the vampire lord, Urzgelda, and I put them in another world, and I had them traveling around, they're both vampires, or at least half vampires. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on with those characters that makes it hard to describe them, but at its base, Urzgelda was a former lord of the vampires until Ray Peril shows up and gives her a good thrashing, and then she decides to follow Ray Peril. She finds out later in the story that she's not a pure-blood vampire, she's half succubus, which really makes her angry, but explains a lot of things that she'd been wondering about. And then pretty much the main character of The Good Guy, which, you would think going into it would be Ray Peril, but it's really not the case. The main character is the narrator of the story. And that's a girl that's sitting in a bar that's in a town that's overrun by vampires. And the story opens with Ray Peril showing up, and there's these 2 vampires in the bar that, everyone's afraid of the vampires, but there's nothing they can do about them. And Ray Peril proceeds to beat the crap out of 2 vampires in front of everyone. And he marches out of this bar. And so the main character, Tammy Nitbar, says, okay, I'm done here. I'm going to go follow that guy. And the story is basically her documenting what she's seeing happening to all these monsters that they come across and what Ray Peril is doing to them.
Yeah.
So she ends up...
I mean, so the trick that is played here is that basically Tammy has the misfortune to get every chapter's monster stacked onto her in some way.
Yeah, she becomes a chimera following him around. Like,
it's the most ridiculous thing ever, but it works so well.
Well, I mean, it's supposed to be an action story and a comedy story and a fantasy just all combined into one.
Well, no, I mean it's just like there's something very wonderful about the way that she's like, oh, now I'm this too.
Well, okay, so she. It's kind of one of the things that surprised me about you saying that you really liked Elishard so much, because I think the most interesting things happened to Tammy throughout the story. I mean, she's there more, so obviously there's more that can happen. But...
The things that happen to Tammy, though, are more like... How do I put this? They're more easily inferred from the narrative.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like okay, so they fight vampires and Tammy gets turned into a vampire. Fine. But then they fight werewolves, and Tammy gets turned into a vampire werewolf. And it's like, okay, I see a pattern developing. And then and then the pattern continues. And so it's like, I mean, like, you come to expect it at that point. So the things that happen are important, and they're central to the story. But you also expect them, which makes them less, like, quirky and like... It makes them less quirky, and it makes them stand out less because they're part of the central story and they're implied by the story.
There's a rhythm to it because it doesn't. I guess it doesn't really matter if I spoil it because it'll be spoiled if you read the short stories. But well, did you read all of those?
I haven't read them yet. No,
oh.
I'm way behind. I've been bad about reading stuff.
No, that's okay. It's I was just wondering like because I mentioned that. You know, I bring up the half succubus and the chimera thing right at the beginning of the story.
Well, it's not a secret. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is in The Good Guy. It's
no, because like I said, once you see the pattern, you know how it's going to go. That's my point.
Well, yeah, but there's also like a rhythm where it starts to trail off towards like the very last thing that happens is she gets a magic bandana that I don't even really do too much with in the story, but then like. There's one more really, really big thing that doesn't happen to her, but she just realizes towards the end of the story.
Uh-huh.
And, I mean, this podcast is... this recording is so far removed from the actual books that we're talking about, I guess it doesn't matter. So basically, she starts off as a normal girl in town, follows Ray Peril, he kills a bunch of vampires, but one of them bites Tammy.
Yes.
In the next chapter, werewolf, like you said, she gets bitten by a werewolf. So now she's the only werewolf vampire in the world because technically it should have killed her. But because of the concoction that Ray Peril invented that allows the vampires to walk in the sunlight, she also just becomes a werewolf instead of dying from the venom.
I forgot about the serum. That's such a great element of the story.
Well,
like it's one of those things that you kind of forget about, and it's like, oh man, that's so good.
Well, it's just funny because it's.
Yes, it is funny. That's the point.
Because I know I've emphasized this before, but I really like to torture my characters, and
yeah.
I have a character, the main character, not the main character, but like the captain of the Racken in the Racken is this really, really, really messed up woman who like needs drugs to get through her day, and she's just seen this horrible stuff. And she's probably the most tortured character I have in a lot of the stories. She is nowhere near tortured as badly as I torture Tammy Nitbar throughout this book. And Tammy takes all of it with, like, she just sort of brushes it off one shoulder because she's just like, well, what can I do? I can't even talk. I can't even tell anyone I'm upset.
Yeah, it's a great combination.
Yeah, she enters the story as a mute. But she's the one that you're getting all of the information from. So every time someone does something to her that she doesn't necessarily like, and they don't know it, she has no way to tell them about this. So she's just like...
Or like when someone is like, hey, I know you, and then walks away, and she's like, no, don't go, I need... Oh, yeah. Dang it.
It's the joke I had the most fun building to in the entire book. Her cousin shows up out of nowhere. Throughout this whole story... She starts off, nobody knows her real name because she can't tell anyone. She's traveling with Erzgelda, the Lord of the Vampires, who ate her family, and Ray Peril, who killed all of the vampires except Erzgelda because he basically turned Erzgelda into his pet without informing her of this. like Erzgelda just starts following him, and at one point he says, "Oh yeah, I'll do a favor for my pets," and Erzgelda's just like, "Wait." But, you know, Tammy's traveling with them all this time, and they get to one point where someone's like, well, who are you? And he's like, I'm Ray Peril, and this is silence. And she's like, well, my name is actually Tammy Knitbar, but I guess it's Silence now, so whatever. And then they get to another group of characters, and like, who are you? And it's like, I'm Ray Peril, and this is Silence the Dread. And she's like, I don't know how I feel about that Dread bit. They get to another set of characters, Silence the Dread Knight. Okay, come on. And then they finally run into her cousin. And her cousin is like, glad to see her, talking with her for a second. She's like, finally, someone that knows my name. He's going to say my name. Everyone's going to know who I am now. And he's about to say her name, and Erzgelda interrupts him and says, oh, you know Silence? And he just stands back and goes, oh, your name is Silence now. That's actually a really cool name. It's really cool that I've got a cousin that's a vampire and a werewolf. Well, it's nice to... And he actually almost starts to say Tammy, and he stops and he goes, I'm sorry, I mean Silence. Nice meeting you again. Anyway, I gotta go. And she is just fuming.
About time for me to be hitting the dusty trail. See you later, Silence the Dread.
Well, her full name ends up being Silence the Dread Knight Silence the Dread Knight Shadow that stalks in the night. I used night twice in her name.
And of course, that's a lovely Darkwing Duck reference for anyone who's approximately our age.
Honestly, I didn't do that thinking of Darkwing Duck.
Really?
I'm gonna...
How did you manage to do that?
Well, I think...
This just got more interesting.
I think what happened was I had actually... Because I think there's a typo in the book.
Uh-huh.
I think that I had written the Dread Knight Shadow that stalks in the night, and I was like... And at one point I had mistyped it as the Dread Knight Terror that stalks in the night or something. Or no.
Yeah.
No, I mistyped it as the Dread Knight Terror that stalks in the shadows.
Okay.
And then
That's far enough away.
Then I had written the Dread Knight Terror that stalks in the night. So I had night in there twice. And I found that mistake, and I was like, actually, I'm going to use the one that uses the word night twice.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened. It
okay.
never actually crossed my mind to relate that to Darkwing Duck, surprisingly.
That's amazing, but okay.
Even though there have been so many times in my life that I have said I am the terror that flaps in the night. It just...
Yeah. That was I mean, like, that was what I mean, you referenced Darkwing Duck more than I do. So, like, I was like, well, I mean, okay, this is a funny little homage in the story, but, like, apparently not.
I did not have that in mind, no. Here, well, I mean, so we completely got away from the three stories that I was going to talk about.
Yes, we did.
But, I'll try to do it quick since we've... well, I mean, this is a potpourri episode. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's a potpourri episode. It's fine.
Yeah, that's So we had three prompts in a row, and oh, geez, what were...
Well, so like to be clear, there were three prompts that were not related to each other, but you chose to make them related to each other.
Yeah. I wanted to do a multi-part thing for a prompt, and so I took two characters that I knew inside and out because I made them, and I had written a whole book with them, and I was like, I'm going to throw them into another world, and I had them encounter this group of vampires that a lot of their best vampires had disappeared, and so comparatively, they were just these really, really weak vampires. And Erzgelda was like, well, I can't just leave fellow vampires floundering here. I'm going to try and help this one become a vampire lord. And so they go on a mission to try and find the former vampire lord, because if he survived, he would obviously be a better vampire lord. And in my stories, the vampires have a really strange hierarchy where it's just like, you're the most powerful, you're the leader kind of thing. Or, you're the best suited, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they go on this trip with this wannabe vampire lord and his two minions. And I'm again doing a Mountains of Madness thing where they take a trip to this Arctic place, which was the second prompt, was the airship one that was landing in this Arctic territory, which is why I said, oh yeah, we're going to turn this into Mountains of Madness.
Yeah.
And so they go into this town and they discover that it's infested with a bunch of creatures, and they find the vampire lord, but he's like possessed by some, we'll go ahead and call it an eldritch horror.
Mm-hmm.
So it ends up turning into this fight with Erzgelda and Tammy are far more powerful than the other vampires. So they think they're going to take the brunt of it. And these vampires then they open up all of their backpacks, and they had apparently brought a bunch of guns with them. And so now these 3 vampires that were woefully underpowered for this situation are suddenly the main fighting force, and Urzgelda's just like, vampires with guns. This is really cool. So that was kind of the premise I was going with, and I haven't written the 4th part, which is going to be the last part. But that's the sum of the story. They find some vampires that aren't doing so hot. As a vampire that turned good guy, Urzgelda wants to kind of turn them away from the idea of treating humans as cattle and instead getting them to work together with the humans. So she takes a vampire lord under her wing.
So the raid doesn't kill them.
Yeah, there's that too. It's like, yeah, we our boss will kill you if you continue to devour humans.
Look, I have some bad news.
And then, a lot of it was just me wanting to write more sassy dialogue with Tammy, where she's just like along for the ride and kind of has to take things as they come. But at the same time, this is after the events of The Good Guy, where she started out as a complete coward, and the entire book she's basically hiding behind Ray Peril while all these bad things happen to her, but he's still the one that's, he's pretty much stuck with... She's stuck with him.
He's the one that protects her just well enough that she doesn't die, but not well enough that she doesn't get infected by every single thing that she meets up with.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much set in stone as soon as she becomes a vampire. It's like, well, anyone else is going to try and kill me, so now I'm kind of stuck following him.
Yeah.
And from there, it's just downhill from there. Because her story arc is one that by the end of the book, she's actually a big hero, and it's like, oh, I'm not a useless little girl hiding from vampires in a bar anymore. I'm actually someone who can do something.
Yep.
She
has a grappling hook.
Yeah, she
can grapple.
That might be my 3rd favorite joke in the book. I gave her a hatred of grappling hooks, and then I gave her a grappling hook. But in this story, she starts out already knowing that she's, she doesn't have too much to fear.
Yes.
And which is why an eldritch horror works so well, because there's not really too much that Urzgelda and Tammy couldn't handle by themselves. Even Tammy by herself, she near the end of The Good Guy, her final little thing that she becomes is, it actually turns out that the entire time, the reason she's a mute wasn't because she couldn't talk, it was because she was a siren. And she just never knew that, and sirens can only sing, they can't talk.
Yeah.
So that's like the last big reveal for her in The Good Guy. And so she ends up being able to use her voice to stun people by singing. So she's already aware of all of this going into this new story. So it's really just a lot more about writing how these other characters are interacting, and she just kind of has to... She's again tagging along, even though she could technically be the leader of the group, but she can't communicate in any way. So she just kind of tags along with these people that are... Urzgelda's bumbling around, and these other characters are bumbling around, and Urzgelda's really like the only real leader that they have in the group. And even though technically Tammy at that point is much more powerful than even Urzgelda, she can't really lead anyone. She doesn't have those leadership qualities because Urzgelda was, she was a vampire lord. So she just kind of has to sit back and let all of these things happen, where these lesser vampires one of them like jumps on her while she's a werewolf and starts riding on her back, and she's just like, "Are you serious? Am I really gonna just, okay, I guess we're doing this." That's almost her whole character by the time it's halfway through The Good Guy. Is just like, I have to accept all of this, don't I? Okay.
I have no choice in the matter.
Yeah, because she's even got this really, really, really ridiculously overpowered ability to use all these ghosts that live in her head. Like at one point when they pull out the guns and they're fighting this infestation in this town where everyone's been killed and the bodies have been dragged away, she goes through the ghosts in her head and she picks out a sniper. She picks out a sniper and just like lets him basically take run of her body and use her body to do his sniping thing with a rifle.
Yeah.
And then later on they're trying to figure out how to get through this. The infestation is just like overwhelming them, and so she has a wizard living in her head, and she's like, well, this one's tricky. I can't really do anything because the wizard needs to be able to chant his spells, and if he uses my body, he can't chant his spells. So she like motions with her hands at one of the other vampires, and to her complete amazement, he actually fully understands what she's implying. So he turns around to the other vampire, clubs her over the back of the head so she passes out, and she passes the ghost into her body so that he can cast his spell. But then I made it a running gag where they keep doing it to the same vampire, and she's just like, would you stop doing that? I don't know. I don't know why I decided to go on this whole thing about the jokes in these stories, but basically I had fun writing them, and it was a fun exercise in using characters after I'd already developed them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we were trying to, I don't know, there was a couple of things going on where we were like, yeah, I wish I understood better what the people are voting for as opposed to what I think is good. But then, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's never going to be...
Your point was that you had made a bunch of stories that you thought were throwaway, and they were more popular than the ones that you spent a lot of time thinking about and planning for, and why that is vexing.
Well, no, I mean, it's not vexing. We talked about this again. I think the last episode we talked about, you're never going to know what readers are going to actually like. Like,
that's true.
Maybe most people
don't you were even making the point that you think that the stories that the other stories were not as mechanically like sound or as like
the Button Man was a first draft. I didn't even edit it.
Right, and so like that's strange, right? Am I? No, I think I'm on good ground saying that like someone seeing some first draft that maybe has a few typos and the structure isn't very good and it probably has a couple of like things that probably could be shortened or brought together or something like that, and they like that better than the thing that you spent a lot of time thinking about and like saying, oh, I would really like to add this, and I would really like to make these two characters have this interaction and this to happen and this to happen. And you put all this work and time into it, and then this thing that you just kind of like out on the keyboard.
I like that book. This is exactly what Ray Bradbury meant when he said, write short stories before you write books, because it's easy to write a bad book. It's really hard to write 52 bad short stories.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for all I know, I'm gonna look back after I finish this fourth part, and I'm gonna read it all as a whole and be like, this is actually kind of crap. Because it's easy for one part to be good, but it's also easy to take the whole in and just be like, okay, well, I mean, when you put it all together, it didn't work out as well as I hoped.
Fair enough.
And there's also that aspect of it. Like personally, I think that people aren't just like, I didn't read all of the prompts before I voted. I read like 6 of them, and then I was like, all right, I don't have time to read everything, so I'm just gonna have to pick from those 6.
Yeah,
I'm willing to bet there's a lot of that going on.
Probably, yeah.
But I don't know. It seems like when you got a banger, people really seem to notice. I mean, they featured one of my stories on the site, and that one...
Oh, yeah, which one was that? That was the Bagmen, right?
Yeah, that was the Bagmen. And that one... Yeah. I mean, I did put a pretty decent amount of effort into writing that one. I thought there wasn't much going on in it. I had fun with it. I tried to make every paragraph of it a little bit of fun.
Well, the thing about the Bagmen was that it had a really good feel to its setting, is what I'll say. It felt like it definitely felt like there was a larger world going on that you didn't get to know about, but that was definitely there. Like it had, like the characters already felt like they had established rapport with each other, and there was no like, it worked really well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, of course, everyone's going to be their own worst critic, but I went back and read it, and like, I did like everything, but I got to the ending, and I was like, did I make the ending just way too, like, I'm going to hurry up and finish this up?
This is the end of the story.
Yeah, because it was really quick. Like, after the main events happened, it was just like, and here's what happened in the future. Goodbye.
Well, no, I think what you did there is you didn't sell past the close. You had this idea. You made the idea happen. You said, here's the thing that I want you to see, and here's what that thing caused. And I think that works pretty well.
I mean, I thought it was a fun idea for sure. I just I was pleasantly surprised that the people at Iron, someone there actually wrote me and said, I really liked this, and we'd like to feature it on the site. I was like, oh, okay, I'm happy with that. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So if you ever want to read about gnomes taking on UFOs,
yeah, go for it. The Bagmen.
Wow, you cannot get me talking about the good guy. It's just too big a book that I can talk about for too long. What did I spend? A half an hour on that?
We kept going back to it, so that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's all good. No, I think we're. I mean, unless you have something else, do we want to call it here? We're already at over 2 hours.
Well, this is. We're going to have to rework whatever title we were going to give this because we did not focus on Iron Age stuff that we wrote.
No, we did not.
Very
no,
much.
I mean, I think I'm just going to title this one like potpourri.
Yeah, and we didn't.
Or this might be our first talking about maybe.
Yeah, just us rambling about our stories.
Talking about recent writings. Talking about. I don't know. I'll give it some thought. But anyway, shall we? I guess we should close it out for the audience.
Well,
so that
before we do,
okay.
What was the first book you wrote in the Derelict series?
It was the Hyacinth Rescue.
And that one's on Smashwords?
Yeah, that was my first one. The one with the really crappy hand drawn cover that I made.
Well, I mean, let's not get started about crappily drawn covers.
No, you do things with colors and it's interesting. I just did a crappy pencil drawing and was like, it's good enough.
It looked like a good sci-fi cover to me. Nothing wrong with pencil.
I'm a really bad. When it comes to drawing, I'm really bad, and I spent only a few hours on that, so I probably should have spent a lot more time. And I could have done all kinds of stuff, make it. I would have really liked to go over it in pen or something like that, but I didn't because I was lazy.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna have to put my covers up. I'm gonna move all those stories from Smashwords over to Substack and put those covers up. They are hilariously bad covers, but
you say that, but they're actually interesting to look at.
Yeah, well, I mean that's
they have kind of like a childish drawing element to them, but at the same time, you're doing some interesting things with colors and the way that you're doing brush strokes electronically, of course. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think they're actually they're not typical. They're not conventional book covers, but I think they do a good job.
I was a bit more interested in making them look like something that would stand out than something that was a work of art. I mean, they definitely do have more of a children's book look to them, even though they're horror stories in some cases.
Horror stories with heavy drug use. Well, I guess the Racken has a more conventional cover.
Yeah, no, I bought the cover for the Racken. I didn't do that one myself.
But it is a little strange to see the three solemn people standing next to a spaceship, and then the next one is this is someone vomited color onto a page.
That's actually a good description. It vomited color onto a page. I'm not good enough at drawing to where I can consistently do things. So I have 3 Cash Marley covers, and she looks different in every single one, in every single picture.
Yeah, that's fine.
But that was normal back at least in the 80s. I remember I would buy a book and there would be a character on the cover, and then the next book the character would look different. It was a different artist or something.
Yeah, sure.
Everything is a lot of things feel sterile now because they just get artists that draw everything exactly the same. Even if it's different artists, it's oh yeah, this character is drawn the same way as it was last time. So you get consistency, which is good, but it's okay, so take 3 books from the 80s that are drawn by different artists, and then take 3 books from now that are drawn by different artists, but they're all the same concept or the same character. And it's so much easier to pick a favorite one out of the older 3 because it's this one really stands out a lot more than the rest. Whereas nowadays it's just well, I like this one better because they're in a boat.
I like boats.
Boats are cool. Yeah, I wanted you to mention the Hyacinth Rescue because I think we always end talking about one of my books. So which
no, that was just so that one was a detective story that doesn't matter wrapped inside a hard sci-fi story.
Yeah, and it was a fun read too. It even had a little touch of that. Oh geez, what's the kind of like the movie Alien, where it's just it's that whole derelict spaceship thing, and I didn't know that was the concept you were using when you wrote that story. I didn't make the connection with the other stories, so
Well, that was my first one, so
Yeah,
I haven't showed all the other ones are still on my hard drive, just unpublished.
But
I really should do something about that.
I've read some of them though, or at least one of them.
Maybe? Yeah, I don't know.
You're not counting the one where they had the one with the guy in the spacesuit that he's protected from the.
No, that's the second novella that I wrote recently. So no, I mean those are the two novellas. But when I wrote that first novella, it wasn't the only thing that I wrote. I wrote a second novella that I haven't published. I wrote a bunch of short stories, several of which had to do with derelict spacecraft, and other ones were just basic science fiction stories. But probably 5 or 7 of them, something like that. I just left all of those unpublished. I haven't done anything with them because once I published in the time it took me to publish that to write and publish the novella, things started to turn around in the lab finally. And I was like, okay, I need to get this done, so I kind of just abandoned it all. But, I still have it all, so I'll probably do something with it someday. Just, I gotta remember to do it.
I just like the idea that you've got a theme running with your stories where it's it's derelict spaceships are, a large collection of what you write.
It's, the thing that, what was it that, it's actually not aliens, it's not Alien or Aliens that got me thinking about it as much as, Metroid, actually.
Oh yeah, that makes sense too.
There's a good feel of that in some of those games. So I don't know. Anyway, yeah, it was just one of those things where I felt like that feeling of isolation is what I was trying to aim for, or that feeling of having to deal with isolation was what I was trying to go for, basically.
Yeah, that's fun.
And I ended up creating a detective action story somehow.
Well. I think that
that story was fun because it was at the end they're like, yeah, I figured out who the murderer was, and it's like, oh, you did? So you didn't tell anybody? What could I do? I had no evidence, so what am I going to do? I'm just going to be like, yeah, it's him because I think it's him. That's not going to fly. So let's all just stay alive and get the hell off of this ship.
It was a good story. It was a good opener to your writing.
It was fun. I reread it. When I started getting back into writing, I reread it because I was like, was this good or was this not? And I actually enjoyed reading it again. So, yeah, it was a fun story.
That actually might be my favorite story that you've done so far.
Really?
The last one that you did is right up there. I liked the hotel story you did where it was like
that story was... I actually had several of the experiences that were in that story in a real hotel.
No, I get that.
And it was just like, I was laying awake in a bed in a room that had only hot water. And I was like... And a man had just knocked on the door to take me to another room that also only had hot water. And I was like, this is so bizarrely surreal that I need to write about this. That was a bizarre. That was a really strange. But it was like, no, this is just too weird. I can't possibly go through this weird experience and not, paint it up a little bit and make it into some kind of story, because it was just so freaking bizarre.
I mean, I have a couple stories that ended up being written for the same reason, but
yeah,
in the interest of ending on one of your stories, I think we'll
get to that next time.
Yeah, we could do another potpourri
some other time.
I would love to talk about the Cash Marley stories at some time, but
oh yeah, that'd be great.
For now, we'll go with the Hyacinth Rescue and what is it again?
what the soul still fears.
What the soul still fears.
What the fear still souls. What the
Dark Souls. We'll call it Dark Souls.
What the fear were you thinking?
That's the sequel. I was going to say it would be really fun to write like a sequel to that story, because it just opened up this whole other thing that you could have people constantly exploring.
Yeah.
Just people are constantly discovering this thing that this other person discovered, so you can keep going back to it and having someone else have an adventure in the same manner.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's definitely, I leave it open to that. But it's yeah, it's definitely been on my mind as something that I could definitely write a sequel to or a related story. So. All
right. Well, that sounds like a good place to end.
All right. This has been episode 8.
Everyone go pre-order What the Soul Still Fears.
But by the time this comes out, it'll just be available to order.
Yes. Pre-order it anyway. Stick it to the man.
To order it. Yeah. Don't be held back by the conventions of HTTPS.
What happened to our website? Someone reverted it. What do you mean reverted it?
What do you mean reverted the website? Yeah, they brought it back to October 28th to pre-order a book that is available on it now.
What the heck is going on? Like Bill Murray walks by in the background.
And like right as he goes out of shot, he just yells mass hysteria for no reason. All right. Episode 8 of the Wordy Pair. Completed our potpourri episode where we talk about things that we've written that we enjoyed.
And get canceled by Penguin Publishing.
Well, no, we got uncanceled because you were like, no, I'd totally, if they gave me
No. I said I would, yeah. There's a price.
There's a price, but you're not like, oh, I would never. Negotiation is possible.
Put it like this. I don't think I would accept a contract with Penguin for a normal author fee. For a normal... a
normal advance.
Yes, for a normal advance. It'd have to be a little bit more. My
Fair
doing
enough.
Business with Penguin fee.
I mean, a lot of their stuff is... What's wrong with most of their stuff? I don't know. They do a lot of historical stuff that nobody else is bothering with.
There's not really that much wrong with them. Okay, so my deal would be absolutely sure, no problem, but it would have to be in my agreement that they're not allowed to line me up for a Hugo Award.
Oh. Well, I mean...
I do not want a Hugo Award, ever.
Ugh. That would be a great skit. like an author at a book signing or something, and like his agent walks up, he's like, "Look at this, you got a Hugo Award." He's like, ugh.
Get out of here.
Look, I hired you to get me work and to help me promote my stuff. I did not hire you to bring in pieces of garbage and hand them to me. Something like that. All right, we'll close it down there. This has been Wordy Pair Episode 8, Potpourri Episode. I'm Rudy.
And Justin.
And we are out.
Thanks for listening to the Wordy Pair Podcast. Our passion is all things writing, world building, and getting into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We hope you enjoyed our unique takes. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to get your weekly dose of writing weirdness. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on Twitter. For Rudy, it's @Rudolph_Cone. And for Justin, @Ninja Mouse Chew. See you next time on the Wordy Pair Podcast.